Here we go with round 2, and our opponent is already down to 6. We also haven't been the luckiest with our opening hands, if you remember all the lands of round 1, game 1. Now we have 0 of them, so also going to mulligan to 6. And let's see if our opponent keeps on 6. I think we will. We don't have a creature yet, and we definitely need one, but I'm not going to mulligan a hand that's almost perfect otherwise. Let's hope that we aren't facing an overly aggressive start, and that we can at least draw one creature at some point. Then we should be fine with the cards we have here. That's already quite interesting. Do you immediately Oars of Charm with Copper Guild Mage, or do you wait for the next creature to appear? I think you actually wait in the Oars of Mirror. There's quite a lot of cards that he could play here that we want to know about. Of course, he could punish us with something like Psychic Strike. That's not the strongest card. Interesting. Pre-combat Shadow Alley Denizen. Gives me basically all the information I want, that I definitely need to kill the Guild Mage now, because he isn't going to drop anything more scary, and I would have wanted to kill it anyway. Just wanted to make sure that he isn't dropping a Kingpin's Pet, for example, which I would rather have killed. And now that he has already tapped out for Shadow Alley Denizen, of course there could be Syndic of Tides, but it's just much less likely that he has something scary to follow it up with. Okay. We're still waiting for a creature, and I could have Death's approached the Denizen here. Maybe that would have been the right play, because it had the potential to just leave him with no creatures after his mulligan, but I was still looking to draw into a creature of my own. Yeah, that was probably a mistake. I should have just traded off the Denizen with the Death's approach, and then had at least had the potential to just... Yeah, so now do I 1000 lashes the Denizen? I almost feel I have to, because I don't want to take too much damage. It's still very possible that there is a counterspell waiting for me, but can't really do much about that. Could have also waited another turn, see if he draws a 5th land, what he drops. He does have to hold something. But the decision not to Death's approach the Denizen really cost me this game. After he dropped Riot Gear, it was pretty clear that the Denizen would turn into a 2/3 threat, so that would actually have been a great use of Death's approach. And now using my 1000 lashes is quite awful, because if he has a large creature, then I've basically enchanted a 1/1. Well, yeah, that's it, because Riot Gear is just going to move. So, yeah, not too happy about my play there. But we drew Armor Transport, the first creature of the match, and if that survives, then we could put Gift of Urzova on it. It doesn't. There's an Oars of Charm, but that's actually fine. He could have returned his Shadow Alley Denizen with the Oars of Charm, and gotten rid of 1000 lashes that way. Horror of the Dim. That's going to be a problem, because cards like Executioner Swing are probably not what we can put on there. I'm going to try to make my mistake a little less bad and just put Death's Approach on there. That means that I take less damage, and if I manage to mill him or destroy more of his creatures, then the horror is also going to go down as a result. There's also the option that he taps out of blue mana and I can just Executioner swing the horror, but I wouldn't say that's very likely. I could put Gift of Orzhova on the Rogue now. I'm very dead to Devour Flesh or anything of that sort, but I can't really play around that anyway. So it is more mana efficient to put the gift on the Death Card Rogue now. I'm just going to go for it. It's not the greatest play, but I've been lacking creatures and don't really see what I should do here. Killing Glare, Grisly Spectacle, a second Oars of Charm. There's a lot of cards that are just very bad for me, but I kind of need to get rid of them. The fact that he Oars of Charmed my Armor Transport earlier probably should have told me that he was holding something else as well. Now we are just taking quite a bit of damage here. We do get to Executioner swing Shadow Alley Denizen, so that's great. And that could actually be the best card to draw here. If we manage to mill a couple of creatures, his Horror of the Dim is handled. Now we do have a blocker for it, but not as good as we would have liked this to be. We might still pull this out despite our mistake, but 4 life is not a lot to work with. Okay. And we can keep in mind that our opponent has pretty bad creatures, but a very high removal count. No problem with dealing with almost anything that we have played. And now we are already chump blocking, which isn't great, of course. We actually see him Death's Approach our Aristocrat as well, so that's lethal. And I feel like we've lost this game because we didn't Death's Approach our opponent Shadow Alley Denizen on turn 3. That would have made such a big difference. Yeah, he still had all this removal, and he could have used Oars of Charm at some point to return the creature that we put 1000 Lashes on, so Horror of the Dim would still have been a problem, but there is no question that we could have played this a lot better and would have been much more likely for us to win the game. Just didn't really consider killing his 1/1 there because it's usually not a good idea, but Riot Gear and the way that we both mulligan to 6 should have told me that I needed to play Death's Approach, simply because my hand didn't really have anything to block or to develop a game plan of my own. Now, Gift of Orzhova and Shadow Slice certainly lose a lot of their value because of all the removal that our opponent has. I think that we might just want to take both of them out and just play a Midnight Recovery instead. Cypher isn't great against removal, but if we can ever get this off, it should almost win us the game immediately. So I definitely want that in my deck. And the other card that I'm looking at is either just one more creature or the Razor Tip Whips again, because he's playing such a removal heavy deck that the whips should be very, very good. Now, Smite hasn't really been great this game because we never got to blocking. That doesn't mean it's a bad card in general, though. And I do want all my creatures because he's playing so much removal. So it's either Prophetic Prism, Smite, or Executioner's Swing, which we could take out here. Smite just feels like it should be good, but he has killed so many of my creatures that I'm just not sure anymore if we can really use it. Alternatively, we just take out the Prism. We are on the play, and it's kind of a filler card. We don't necessarily need it, so that just means that we need to draw a Plains at some point. So hopefully we can do that. But the game should go long. Not a great hand, but I'm not going to mulligan. Don't think that we can afford to in this matchup or in general. I also feel like that we should be favored in this matchup. He's playing 1/1s for 1, and Intimidate isn't even good against us. So I'm not sure what he's about to do. He can't play removal on all of our creatures. So the Shadow Alley Denizen in particular is just a mulligan, basically. Of course, if he has removal for all of our creatures, then that's a different story, but let's hope that's not the case. Yeah. Just killing everything he sees. This is quite an interesting turn because all these cards have different upside. We have 2 creatures in our graveyard, so Death's Approach is guaranteed to kill our 2 toughness creatures and basically the Balustrade as well if he wants to play that. Counter Aristocrat is somewhat safe from removal if we drop it with another creature. So what we could do is just place creature and Counter Aristocrat, making sure that he isn't going to be able to attack us effectively, and then we can Balustrade Spy and Extort next turn. We miss an Extort trigger that way, but I think that's worth it. Duskmetal Guildmage isn't too threatening at this stage of the game. Something that could certainly get out of hand if we don't do anything to deal with it, but I'm actually kind of happy to see that rather than a 4-drop here. Deathcard Rogue, also a nice card. We have Call of the Nightwing, Angelic Edict, Coerced Confession, and Oars of Guildgate. Okay. Yeah, it looks like our opponent is really going for the control plan, which I like. I think it's a good plan. Going to hold back the Aristocrat. Don't want him to block it and force me to do something or trade off, which I don't really want. So he destroys the Balustrade Spy, goes down to 13. That's very fine with me. And we have our opponent down to 1, so without some of the card advantage cards like Call of the Nightwing and the Confession, maybe we should be fine. Doesn't offer the trade with the Guild Mage. Probably understandable. On the other hand, he could have then started to attack with his 1/1 at some point, so really not clear. We once again have the option to offer the trade with our Aristocrat, and would just lose it to both Denizens blocking, so I think that we are very fine with just staying in the air, and Deathcard Rogue is unblockable right now as well. I like the Aristocrat on defense here quite a bit. Okay, he's milling us. We have 3 creatures in our graveyard already, so can't be that he has Death's Approach. Don't really know why he did that main phase. It's always possible that we are facing a deck that plays Merciless Eviction, but I don't see a reasonable way to play around that. He could just play... Oh. I actually didn't know that. I've played 50 drafts in this format, but I didn't know that Shallow Ellie Denizen is a rogue. I think that's still a very fine trade for us, so not a big loss here. A Devour Flesh. Interesting. Card Aristocrat has to be the weakest card here. Basilica's Creature only hits for 1, and then we need to extort, but the ability of Duskmantle Guildmage is more or less irrelevant, so I don't want to keep the creature that trades for Duskmantle Guildmage. But rather put him on a clock. Kato Aristocrat is very, very good against all of his removal. And he has a Grisly Spectre before the Deathguard Rogue. Hopefully we can draw another extort creature here, that would be great. Or the Razor Tip Whip would be fine as well. Okay, has to do. It's a creature. A creature that's pretty hard to block as well. So if he attacks with the Guild Mage here, we might want to not block, because there's a very good chance that Armor Transport just is going to be able to get through for 2 damage. Okay, it looks like he wants to block the Armor Transport, which is great. Interesting, he didn't offer the trade, but which I wouldn't have taken. I'm clearly the deck that's racing his here. And Kingpin's Pet should do it. We're very far from getting milled. He does see the Midnight Recovery there. Not a big deal though. He hasn't seen the Razor Tip Whips yet. And if he doesn't have anything here, we probably get milled 1 or 2 more times. And then we head into game 3. So Shadow Ellie Denizen is a rogue, as it turns out, Vampire Rogue. but he has almost no creatures. It's really crazy. The creatures he's played have been 1/1s and 2/2s. And okay, he has Call of the Nightwing, which can take over a game, but the rest of his deck is just removal. And he does see another Spy and the Gateway Shade. And 1000 Lashes, which he knew about. Okay, there we go. There was some trouble with my opponent's connection, so I had to wait quite a bit and did restart Magic Online to make sure that I was still connected, which does mean that I need to redo my sideboarding, but that shouldn't be a problem. Kind of like what we did last time with Midnight Recovery and the both Razor Tip Whips, rather than Shadow Slice and some of the removal spells, but now that we've seen that he has almost no good creatures, his best creature being the one that gets hexproof, Smite is just too bad to keep in. And I do like Shadow Slice quite a bit more because we are going to be racing his deck all basically from the start. I want to keep in the 2 removal spells that are really good, but Executioner's Swing is also not really great. So now we can maybe take out Prophetic Prism as well, if we want one more creature to work with. Maybe even the Slate Street Ruffian. Prophetic Prism is nice, but the game should go long enough that flooding is a serious problem, and probably the person that floods out loses. And I don't want to play Mental Vapors if the game gets into a position where we just have 0 cards both, and I don't want to have this dead draw, but rather something that I can do. I have to be careful with Backing Apparition because I want to remove my own creatures from my graveyard against his Death's Approach, but I do have Midnight Recovery, so that's something to keep in mind. And yeah, let's go with Orzhov Aggro for Game 3. We are on the draw. Oh, not actually clear if his deck wants to play first, but he's keeping 7. We have a Plains and a Swamp, and with any land we can start casting our spells. Backing Apparition not live yet, but I'm hopeful. I'm not going to mulligan this. Especially if we are scared that flooding is the easiest way to lose this matchup. Then I'm very happy to have all these creatures. And Backing Apparition should be very good as well as a way to either get in some damage or be sacrificed to Devour Flesh. The way I see this game developing is him trying to deal some early damage with his cards, but I already have quite a lot of creatures to put in his way. He has basically a double mulligan again with both Shadow Alley Denizens. Even though they can block Deathcalc Rogue, that's not really a problem. And here I'm going to go with the Ruffian as my weakest creature, because if he has a removal spell and wants to deal damage here by attacking, then I don't want him to also be able to kill my best creature. I also have to be aware that he has the double block for Deathcalc Rogue in play already, but I have multiple cards to handle that. The real question being how I want to play my extort triggers this game. Now, any creature I play is not really going to be good at blocking, and most likely getting killed by an Oars of Charm. So I can't prevent him from killing my creatures, obviously, but I can manage which creature he's able to get with his Oars of Charm. So I'm going to go with Death Cult Rogue here. It's a great creature to have, but I feel it's weaker than Kingpin's Pet or Balustrade Spy. So if he Oars of Charm's dead, I want the Slate Street Ruffian on defense, and as long as he isn't doing anything, then I'm also fine with that. His biggest threat is Call of the Nightwing and Horror of the Dim. So these are the two cards I'm aware of that I have to play around. And I want to use my Backneck Apparition to foil any of his Devour Flash plans. It also looks like he isn't playing any removal spell right now, which is kind of weird because he has been playing his removal spells very, very early in the other games, so kind of confused about that. No blocks on Death Cult Rogue, even though he could block. He isn't interested in trading 2-for-1 this time. On the other hand, my bad creatures are very good at blocking his at this point. There's his big finish, his hexproof creature. That's an interesting draw. We do have Shadow Slice mana, and we could Shadow Slice up the Spirit, which is awful against removal, of course, but great against a lot of the other things that he could do. We also have Kingpin's Pet and Death's Approach already, so quite a lot of ways to deal extra damage. I think that he has to have a removal spell, and we kind of want him to use it on something. So what we could do here is drop Balustrade Spy and see if we mill 1 or 2 creatures to get rid of his Denizen. But if he double blocks the Death Cult Rogue, I'm actually very fine with that, because it gives me the option to Death's Approach the Guild Mage while still playing Kingpin's Pet. So I think I have to attack this turn. Holding back my 2 bad creatures, which can actually block Horror of the Dim if necessary. Even if he has an Oars of Charm, then he still has only dealt with my 2 weakest creatures, giving me the most utility to actually win the game. It's very interesting to see whether he goes for the double block on Death Cult Rogue. Not an easy decision. Wow. That's insane. We milled. So many cards. Hold the Gaze, Grisly Spectacle, Nafta Commandos, Angelic Edict, Devour Flash, Bell's Face Bind, Angelic Edict. So Death's Approach actually not being a very good card now that I think about it, because he doesn't have all that many creatures in his deck. So yeah, Hold the Gaze would have been amazing for him. All the removal spells and 2 great creatures as well. So kind of like seeing that great mill on our part, and I think that means we just Death's Approach his Guild Mage, either this turn or the next. I like waiting one more turn on that, because Kingpin's Pet is going to trigger Extort if we do that. And I'm not too scared about the activation. Or to put it differently, if he uses the mana to activate his Guild Mage once or twice this turn, then I'm in a very good spot. Guardian of the Gateless. That's definitely the best creature I've seen from him. And he does keep open double blue, so he doesn't have Oars of Charm in hand. Otherwise he would have held open Oars of Guildgate and Dimir Guildgate. And we only have 2 creatures in his graveyard, so we need one more to Death's Approach the Guardian here. Another Kingpin's Pet is a great draw. Deathcard Rogue still poses the same threat, but we could also attack with the Ruffian. I don't think it's likely that he blocks, because he would have to discard. But if he's holding a land, then I suppose he could just do that. I was hoping to get a creature into his graveyard, but that might be a bit too ambitious. So let's just go with the Rogue here. Had I drawn a land, I could have actually Shadow Sliced onto the Rogue. And then he's almost guaranteed to block, which means I can then Death's Approach the Guardian, but not under any immediate pressure here. Even though the Guild Mage is a bit more scary now. Right gear. If he puts a right gear on the Guardian, then we aren't going to get through with that. He could also put right gear on Shadow Valley Denizen. Then we wouldn't be able to attack with Deathcard Rogue anymore. This is an interesting game. Our opponent is down to almost 5 minutes because of his connection troubles. But I think we should be favored to win here. I would love to get rid of that Guardian, but we don't have the tools to do so right now. And he does make his Rogue a 2/3, a very reasonable line there. I have multiple options here. One is to just get rid of the Guild Mage, and the other one is to try to get rid of the Guardian somehow. But that means I need one more creature to hit the graveyard, and currently I just don't see how I could do that. So it's kind of a standoff where I feel like I just have to wait and see what happens. What I could do is offer up one of my flyers for his Guardian, but that just doesn't seem very smart. Could also attack with something like Armor Transport just because I can, and then see what happens. If he blocks with the Guardian, then I get 2 Death's Approach it, but it's much more likely that he just blocks with the Horror and nothing happens, because the Horror has hexproof. Yeah, let's just wait. I'm still not afraid to lose this game to his Guild Mage or to his creatures. And he could start milling now. And then I might be forced to use the death's approach and just try to win with extra triggers and so on. Okay, he's actually starting to mill me. Got the Midnight Recovery out of my deck. And that probably means that he wants to mill another time, but keeps open blue for Horror of the Dim. So we really don't have ways to attack here. The Guardian is at its best, at its absolute best, I have to say. I'm going to try to attack with the Armored Transport and then see from there. Blocking with the Denizen is a fine choice. And I'm going to get rid of the Guild Mage. I think it has gotten to a point where I need to do something. And he can't really mount an offense, so the Guild Mage is very important for him to actually kill me. That would have been a great draw. Opponent's down to 10, which means 5 if we Shadow Slice him. And we are on 23, with him not really having a win option so far, because we got rid of the Guild Mage. Undercity Farmer would have almost won immediately. 8 lands against 9. Yeah, that would have basically been a game winner right there, I suppose. That's very interesting, Death's approach, because we have only a single creature in our graveyard. Okay. Yeah, but he does kill a creature that's absolutely irrelevant on this board. Okay, that makes more sense. The way this game is going, it might actually end in my opponent timing out. Well, or not. Horror of the Dim turning into a 4/6. And Guardian of the Gateless turning into a 4/5. He certainly can't attack with the Guardian. He could have attacked with Horror of the Dim, but then I would have triple blocked. And what I don't understand is how he can just leave back only these 2 rogues, because it does mean that Death Card Rogue can just attack here. And drawing 1000 Lashes is pretty insane as well. Now, if I have 1000 Lashes the Guardian, I just attack with everything but the Ruffian, and that should just end the game. He does get to kill Death Card Rogue if he wants by double blocking, but I don't understand how you can Riot Gear up Guardian of the Gateless, because it's so strong when blocking multiple creatures already, so there's really no reason to do that. Now our opponent is going down to 3. We have the Kingpin's Pad and we have the Shadow Slice. And our opponent hasn't shown much to beat that. I don't think there are many cards he could draw here that would let him survive. He drew an Orzhov Charm, which is a great draw, but we have the Shadow Slice to punish him. The important thing about Orzhov Charm is that it only returns your auras, so the 1000 Lashes does go to the graveyard. And Shadow Slice wins it. Yeah, that was another close match, but we managed to come out victorious. So see you in the finals.